Okay, so you can see here I've started to do my planning on this upper level. In so the area plan there, you'll see I've got a bit of a layout coming together, and so I'm then going to start to work out my natural lighting. So I've placed a window in there. Show you that in the regular floor plan, and it's just the window that you'll have in almost every project that you start in Revit. So it's not this one that's selected there, it's the one below, M fixed. And you obviously have those different sizes preloaded. But it's not what I want. I don't want that to show the windows like that. I want them to be graphically a bit cleaner. So I'm going to show you how to make your own window family from scratch. And it should be a really good way of learning about families in general. So first thing is don't use model in place as a way of making all your families. If you use model in place too much, it'll give you some really bad habits and actually create a lot of work for you. So what you need to be thinking about with Revit is when you need to make a loadable family. And a loadable family is simply one in a separate file. And they're just as easy as model in place, except that you start them on the main menu by going to New and then Family. So Ali, yeah. And then choose your template. So this is probably the most confusing part at first. When you start a project file, you don't have many choices for your templates, but when you start a family, you've got this big long list of templates, but they're really just there to make your life easier because they give you the setup for these different things that you need to make. And a tip I can give you there is still try and use the simplest one you can. So I'm making a window, and there are 3 different options there for window templates, but these 2, metric window, curtain wall, metric window with trim, are going to give me extra things I don't need. So I'm just going to use metric window, and it's the same if you're making, for example, some furniture. So you've got some different options for furniture templates there. Just use metric furniture if you're not sure. Again, metric generic model, you've got all these different options, but if you just use metric generic model without anything after it, generally it'll work better for you. So again, I'm going to make a window, so metric window is the template I want. And you can see there it's set up with a wall with an opening cut already, and I have a width property set for me as well. So looking in 3D, you can see we've got that wall there with the opening cut, and I'll just show you there, the wall is obviously an object, I can select that, but then the opening is an object as well, so it's actually on the inside. I can select it without tab, but if it doesn't come up automatically, you should be able to use tab to highlight it, and you can see there I've actually selected it, even though it's hard to see, and over there you can see it says opening cut, and I can go to edit sketch and change that if I need to. So when you make window components, you can just make them inside that preset opening. And so to make your window elements, you've got all the modelling tools you're probably used to. And so I'm simply going to use extrusion. And I'm going to go to the exterior view. And like I said, I'm going to do a very simple window to begin with. So I'm going to use extrusion in this exterior elevation view. And I'll use pick lines. And I'm going to turn the lock option on. So now I'm simply going to pick the sides of my opening. Notice it comes up with a padlock on each side, and that tells me if the opening moves, these lines are going to move with it. Okay, so I've finished the outside. Now I'm going to go to the offset tool and leave the copy option on, but I'm going to put an offset value in there. And, well, do you know what the standard size for a window jamb when you're just drawing a simplified one in plan? Yeah, look, if they're metal they could be, but for timber 50 is probably the standard. For doors, you draw them 40 mil, but then it's just a bit of a convention. You draw them 50, even though in reality, you probably know if you've ever built a window or done any building work, they're not that size at all. It's just a drawing convention. So I'm going to do it 50, and then pick each of these sides. If you want to, you can use tab to save time there, but if you pick them individually, you just need to go and trim them. And so now you just want to think about what's going to happen when these things change. So the whole point when you're making a family like this is it's going to be adjustable. In other words, it's going to change size. And so when I move the sides of my opening on the outside, for example, we know that the edges on the side of my frame are going to move with it. But then what's going to happen with the insides? How does the program know what to do with those unless we tell it? Okay, so you need to be thinking about that. And so here I'm going to draw a dimension, and I'm going to just draw it from the outside edge, which we know is locked to the opening, and I'm going to then dimension to the inside, place it up here, and then I'm going to lock that dimension. So that means as the edges of the opening move, these inside edges of the frame are going to stay 50 mil from the outer edge. So I'll do the same at the top and the bottom. Okay, so this is how you make your families adjustable. And really the whole point of making families like this is that they can be adjustable. Okay, so tick to finish. And I'm going to go into plan view so that you can see the depth of my frame. Alright, so this is measured from the inside face of the wall. Okay, and so I'm going to, again, I'm trying to do a fairly simplified window here. So I'm going to establish this from the centre line there. And so you'll see if you select it, it's got a name, centre front back. So to make my life easier, I'm going to select my extrusion and then go to edit work plane. You can see there it's on this reference plane called exterior, which is on that face there. I'm going to change it to centre front back. Click OK, and that's moved it onto my, obviously my centre plane or centre front back. And then I'm going to change the start to -50, and then the end to 50. So what that means is that it's always going to be centred in the middle of the wall, and it's going to go 50 mil either side. We can make that adjustable later on as well, but I'm just going to leave that fixed for now. So going into my 3D view, I'm going to do something that's really important when you're making your own families. It's called flexing. So basically testing out your families to make sure they work with different sizes. So if you miss the button I click there, it's this one up here in properties. You don't have this with projects, it's only in family files. You see they've got family types. Also, actually you do have that when you go to model in place, so you'll have that option as well. And so there, I'm going to put in a width different to what I've got. I'll make it 1500, click apply, and you can see the frame goes with my opening. Change the height as well, make that 2000, click apply, and again, the frame's going with that. Right, so then I'll go back in my exterior view again, and this time I'm going to make some glass. So I'm going to go to extrusion again, but this time I'm going to go to set and choose the plane in advance this time. So I'm going to just make sure it's on centre front back, just like the frame. Click OK. Pick lines. If lock's turned on, I can then just pick the edges of my frame and put in a start and an end. So I'm going to make the start. Well, do you know how thick glass is normally? Yeah, that's actually not a bad thickness. It's really unusual when you... Sorry? It's about 6 point something. I always forget the point. But if you talk to a glazier, they'll tell you it's 6.18 or something like that. And I used to work with a shop fitter actually who's got a business not far from here, and he tried to get me to remember all the different glass sizes, and I never could. But yeah, it's from 6 to about 12 or something like that. But if you draw it that thin, it'll just show as a big blob in your plan because the lines will be too close together. So if you do it 20 mil, for most drawings that should read pretty well. So I'm going to make it -10 for the start and then 10 for the end. So that'll be 20 altogether. And tick to finish. Have a look in the 3D view and we can see the glass to the inside the frame. So now I need to set the materials. And for this, I'm going to make some new parameters. Right, so just going back to family types there, you can see I've been adjusting the width and the height. They're predefined parameters. And so I shall just go back in there and show you that we've got a construction section up there, but there's no materials section. So now what I'm going to do is select, I'll start with the frame, and so I'll select the frame, and then you can see over here we've got material by category. So I'm going to click browse there and assign a material. But have you ever seen in a family that you've loaded that it'll have a material assigned to something, but then you can't go and change it in properties? If you go edit type, there'll be no option to change the material, and so that's what I'd get if I just put the material in without doing anything else. Right now, so okay, so I don't think we've had really much of a look at materials. I know I've probably touched on them, but how have you been shown to make new materials? Have you been shown a way of making them from scratch, or just duplicating? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it. That's not a bad way. Going down there, you can make a new material from scratch, and then that's actually not a bad method. But the duplicate method is fine as well if you right-click on any material and then go to duplicate. But yet another way that I'm going to show you now is to click on this button up here. That will show the materials panel, which is kind of like a global library. And if you click on the folders there, you can expand those and see all the different categories. So I want wood, and I can start with any of these. So they give you a complete setup as a starting point. So I'm going to click on the little arrow next to that, and it'll load in my wood material. So it's important to realise this is your global materials library. This list up here is the list in this file. And that's why it's smaller than the list you get in, say, your project file. So I've got this material called wood, and I might then right-click on that now that it's in my file, and rename that, and we'll call it wood frame. Okay, so then I'm going to customise the appearance. Going to the Appearance tab, and you can see it's set to just be pine. So maybe I want a different type of timber. So I'm going to right-click on the Appearance tab and go to Replace. And that takes you to the library for rendering, essentially. So the Appearance tab is mostly for render materials. So again, if you missed that, it's really important. You can click on the Replace button at the end of that name as well. It does the same thing. But usually it's easiest just to right-click on the tab and choose Replace. And there it's important that you realise you've got two things. You've got the Autodesk physical library or physical assets, which is really only useful if you're doing all the different things Revit can do, like thermal analysis and things like that. If you're not doing that, the Appearance library is better because it's got a lot more in it. So if I go down to wood, you can see here we've got a nice big selection of different types of wood. Okay, so I'm just going to get a fairly dark wood, and I don't want any gloss, so I'm just going to double click on that teak, that'll do. So that's now loaded into my wood frame material. Now I can go back to graphics and just tick use render appearance. And then I might want a cut pattern as well, so that in plan I see maybe just a diagonal crosshatch is enough. And I don't need a surface pattern. So I've done that material, click OK, and then in shaded I'll see that plain colour I've set. In realistic I'll see the appearance with the texture, and then in plan I'll see the crosshatch, which is a bit hard to read at this scale. But if I go to, let's say 1 to 10, well, unfortunately it's the same size as the pattern in the wall. Probably not going to be a huge issue in the project, but I'll just show you how to change that. So, quick way of going to materials is to go to the Manage tab and then Materials. There it is, and I click on that. So this is just called Diagonal Crosshatch, and it is, 5mm, so I'm going to make a new one. And we'll call this Diagonal Cross Small, and leave it at 3 and just make that crosshatch. Yeah, that sounds a bit better. Okay, so like I was saying, that's often going to be set up for you in many families. You'll have a material assigned, but then to make it adjustable, I've got to do one extra thing. And this is where people get maybe put off and think it's a bit too hard, but it's really easy actually. If I select that object, now that I've assigned a material, you'll see that there's a button at the end, which often people click on by mistake and wonder what it does. That's the button to add a parameter. So that grey button there at the end, it's actually Associate Family Parameter. And then if I just go to Add Parameter, and you can see there it's automatically grouped under Materials and Finishes. That's how it should be. And I'm going to call this Frame Material. Okay, so when I click OK, and then OK again, you'll see that now that material option's greyed out. But you can still change it. If you go to Family Types, then you'll see you can change it there. And notice how now it's added this Materials and Finishes category, and I've got that parameter that I've defined called Frame Material coming up here. So I'll do that to the glass now as well. So I'm going to select my glass. First step, assign a material, just because you want a default material assigned. So when you load it in, it's got something. And luckily here we've got a glass material, I can just choose that. And then I may want to be able to change my glass in the project. So just like before, I'm going to click on the Associate Material button, Associate Parameter button, Add Parameter, and this will be Glass Material. That's it. So now I'm going to save that file.
So Jenny, the option to change the height and width, that's automatically a parameter that you don't have to add.
No. That's right, yeah. But I'm going to show you how to add your own dimensional parameters in a second as well. They're not that hard, but yeah, most families will give you things like height and width set up already.
Some of those they don't, there are a couple.
Yeah, some don't. So generic families, for example, they don't. So we can just add them. They're fairly easy to add. So, I'll show you how to add them in a second. So I'm going to save this so you can get to it. I'll just put it in the Revit library in the Windows folder, and we'll call it Fixed Basic Graphical, because it's not how you actually build the window, but it's good enough for a graphical display. And then load in the project, and I can start to use it, and it'll probably make it a bit clearer what those parameters are for if you're not sure why I've done all that. Okay, so you can see now how that's showing up in plan. If I select the window and go to Edit Type, then you can see we've got the height and width, and then those parameters that I've defined for the material. So that's how you make adjustable families. if I go to a 3D view, okay, you can see my window there. Don't know what that is behind it. Oh, that's just some bit of a curtain wall hanging going from the level below. Won't worry about that. Okay, so if I select it there, then you can see if I go to edit type, I can change the frame material. So I might decide, well, actually I want that to be metal. So I can go and see if I have a metal material here that I can use. Click OK. And the material changes. If I want to make a different size, again, edit type, and I can just change that size, 1000, and maybe I'll make the height a bit more, 2500. Okay, but if I need additional sizes, again, back to edit type, then it's a good idea to duplicate this so I can add in multiple types or multiple sizes. So if you don't put any in the family, it'll just give you this name with the same name as your family. So you can duplicate in the project. So I'll do that and I'll make it, what's the size I've already got there? 1000 by 2500. Okay, then I'll go duplicate again and we'll make a different size. So I'll make it 800 by, let's see, 4000. I want to make a nice high one. Click OK. And, oops, I didn't actually put the numbers in. That's okay, so I can just go back to there. It's still got the height and width from before, so I'll just change those now to 800 by 4000. There we go. Click OK, and it changes. So in my list now, I've got those two different sizes. Don't worry about the one that's got the name, that's just going to be the original size. And then back to edit type, and I might do one more size. So this one I forgot the millimetres, so I can just go to rename there and add those in. And then I'll duplicate and make another one 8000. Okay, so I've got that going across multiple levels. And I've got these transoms that are obviously, or the floors coming through. And when I bring the floors back, I probably want to have a transom in the window that's going to cover up that floor. So I'm going to show you how you can add in things like that to your family. Right, so I'm going to go to, well, firstly I'll show you a little trick. If I go to Edit Family now, and then I'm going to go up here to Family Types, and you can see there that I don't have an option to choose different names. And they should be there. So I've made those different sizes in the project and they're not coming through to my family. So a good trick there is to close the family file. And then, so just if you're not sure about that, on the main menu you can always choose close, which will just close the file you've got open. And then if I choose that family again and go to edit family, it's going to reopen it. And if I go here, it's got the sizes that I've put in. So that's a really handy trick to get any sizes you put in or any types you add in a project file to come back into your families. There you can see that the wall isn't big enough, so I'm going to go and change that and make it big enough for my window. And then let's get one of those sizes that I've set up as well. There we are, so that's working. The wall's playing up a bit there, so let's have a look at that. Okay, what's it doing? Let's have a look at that. So, brilliant. Love it when it does this. Okay, so let's have a look in wireframe. So you can see there it's decided to play up a bit, but that's really common with families, unfortunately, so let's have a look at it. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to go and adjust this. So if I mean, it was fine in the project, but I just want to make sure it's working properly. So you can see that the opening there is adjusting the way it should be. And I'm going to go and use the Align tool and just select the edges, click on the thing I want to align with it, and it'll tell me the constraints aren't satisfied, so that's fine. I can remove constraints and then again lock. So I'll just do that on each side. It's just because the wall wasn't high enough, but those things happen. So here again, just for the top, relock. Okay, so that should have fixed it. Just check it in the shaded view. There we are. Okay, so I want to put some transom pieces in that go across and give me the option of having something on the edge of my floor. So I'm going to go into an exterior view and then just create a new extrusion. Just drawing a rectangle. And so the first thing is to draw a dimension from the sill to the bottom of this extrusion. I'll place it over to the side, and then I'll draw another dimension from the bottom of my extrusion to the top, and then again place it over the side. So now, this is how you add a parameter for a dimension. Just select the dimension, and then you can go to label. So that's an option you don't get in projects. Again, this is just a thing you get in families. And so there, you can go to add parameter, and we'll call this transom 1, height. Click OK. Now I can select the second one, and we'll go again to label, add parameter, call that transom thickness. And so I've done the top and the bottom. The sides, though, aren't attached to anything, so I've got to go and use the Align tool and choose the side of my frame, and then the line, lock, the other side, and then the frame, lock. Tick to finish, and then let's have a look at it in 3D. So I've got that transom there, and if I go to family types, you can see there those two properties come up, so I can change transom 1 height to let's say 2000, click apply, and it moves. If I change the size of the window to a bigger one, now first, before I do that, a really good idea to get the wall, make sure the wall's high enough, or it could play up. That's okay. So again, now if I select my window, just go to family types, and then I'm going to change the size to the other one, and actually I'll make a new one because that's the same width, so I'm going to click new. You don't click duplicate when you're in a family, you click new to make a new type, and I'll make it 1200 by 8000. Click apply, there we go, and the transform's gone with it, so the width changed as well. Okay, so then I can do another one, same way, exactly. So I'll show you what happens if I copy this, just to finish up with this sort of basic family. If I go and edit that new extrusion, you'll see it's got the transom thickness there, because that can be copied, but it's lost that property that I set coming from here, because that can't be copied. So I've got to just go and add in a new dimension from the sill to the base there, place it over the side, select the dimension, go to label, add parameter, and this will be transom to height. The sides should still be locked. Oh no, sometimes you lose that as well, so it's no problem to just go and use align, side first, and thing you want locked to it, and then the other side, and again, thing you want locked. Right, so that the ability to do those things is actually one of the main selling points of Revit over something like ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD gives you options like this, but with ArchiCAD you have to use a scripting language to do these things. But Revit has the ability to make parameters and things like that graphically. So in other words, you're drawing the elements that you want to be adjustable.
Is there the option to turn the transoms off? You can have an option to turn...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. Yep. So, okay, so if I select those, I'm just going to save this as a different family. So I'd have one with and one without. So I'm going to go save as, and then I've got the original one that doesn't have the transoms. So that's a simple way. So here we are. So save as, we'll call basic graphical with transoms. But then, if you do want to have the option of turning them off, anything in Revit, you can select it and then go to here, you've got this visible option. So you can add that as a parameter. So you can add there, add parameter, and transom, which one did I select? Transom 2, I think it was. 2 visible. So now if I go into family types, it's got this extra property to switch it on and off. So I can make a new type with transom 2 turned off and just turn off that tick box. It's that easy. And that's a really good idea for some things. So that one now, I'll just finish off with that second transom. So notice I left that transom thickness from the one below. I can use the same parameter to adjust both of those things. So if I go into family types now, and so my floor might be a different thickness, and so if I change that transom thickness there to say 200, then they both change. So maybe 150 is what I've got the floor at now, so I'll leave it at that. Okay, so now I can, again, I'll just save that file, load in the project, and then I can play around with those properties in a project file. And that's really the whole point of setting parameters. You establish them in a family file, but then you adjust them generally in your project files. Okay, so there's the one I've just loaded, and so I need to remember this is set up to have those two transoms, and if I don't remember to leave the height going up to show the second transom, then I'm going to have a transom in the middle of the wall. So it's all down to the way I've made the family for the uses that I've got for it, and that's why often when you find families other people have made, they can behave in unusual ways because they've set them up in a way that makes sense for them, and they're not going to work for you every time. So here, if I choose a different size, that's working just fine, and I can maybe make it even higher. And oops, I keep forgetting to change the actual values there. So the height there, 12,000, and the width needs to be 1,200. There we go. So that's actually a bit too high. So it's maybe 10,000. Yep, that's about what I want. And then I can have a look at the values for the transoms. So we've got transom height 1. Needs to come up maybe 2200 or something like that. And a good trick there is just to change it and click apply. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's see, so transom 1 height maybe Let's try 3,000. There we go, pretty good guess. And then transom 2, let's try 6,000. There we go, not enough, so 8,000. There we go. And the floors are in the way, so I'll just quickly get that floor edge back a little bit so I can see them again. There we are. No, that one's got to come back too, but you can see here that one looks okay. So, what did I forget though with those transoms? Exactly, yeah. So, not a problem though, I can just select it, edit family, and I don't need to do all that work I did with the other parts of the frame because I've made the material already, so I can assign it. Notice it even comes in with that metal material that I did in the project, and then I can use the same parameter, frame material. Don't need to make a new one. Same with this one. And then the parameter. There we go. Always a good idea, just out of habit, to save the file. You don't have to, but yeah, it's a good idea. So load it back in. And here, it's tempting to always choose this bottom option, overwrite the existing version and parameter values, but you don't have to. Often it's better just to choose the top option, overwrite existing version, and if you've been playing with the parameter values in your family, it won't bring them into your project, and that sometimes is going to help you as well. So I'm just going to choose that option there, and there we are. So maybe just to finish up, this floor edge can come back as well, and we'll see that other transom. There we go. Okay, so hopefully I'll give you some ideas about how you can work with your own families. And so a really good option here might be to make a window with adjustable louvers. Okay, so I'll show you one that I've made later on, which has louvers which can change angle. So there's a property you can just go in and change the degrees, and that way when you're doing your rendering, you can get different amounts of sunlight in through your louvers just by changing that property, and you can get hundreds of louvers to change angle in one hit instead of going and doing that manually, which is obviously a huge amount of work. So yeah, just think about the things you could do just by changing some properties, and maybe have a go at making some of the families you need. And so the final thing I'll say there, if you need anything repeated, so if there's anything that is being used more than once in your project, I'd highly recommend that you make a family file so you can load it in from that file instead of just using model in place. If you're using model in place to make anything that you're using more than once, you're basically just creating work for yourself. Okay, because you need to go and edit each of those instances every time you want to make a change, instead of just editing the one thing and then it'll change everything. And that's where people, I've seen it so many times, especially at Enmore where I teach interior design, they're always doing custom, unusual elements, and they do really complex modelling quite often. And so a common thing I see is maybe a screen wall just made of lattices, and quite often they'll just go in and model an extrusion. It might just be a cylinder using model in place, and then they'll copy that throughout their project. And I've seen projects where they've got hundreds of them, thousands actually, and then they realise they've forgotten to put a material on. And so they have to go back and select each one, edit in place, select the solid, assign the material, finish it, select the next one, edit in place, assign the material. Do that 1,000 times and see how much you enjoy it. If you remember to make it a loadable family, you do that once, load it in, and it changes all 1,000 of them in one go. Right, so that's the way you want to be thinking about your families.